In this episode of The Point, I speak to Marc Brew, looking at the meeting point of creativity and disability, how movement, identity, and artistry evolve through change. It's a story about strength, transformation, and the beauty of moving different. Hello, and welcome to The Point. I'm Suzie Birchwood, and today I'm joined by somebody very special to me, the renowned dancer and choreographer Marc Brew. That's him.
Oh,
Marc, you're very, very welcome. Marc and I share a very powerful connection. We both trained as classical dancers in non-disabled bodies. We both acquired our disabilities at a really young and tender age. And our lives and our art have been very much shaped by that transformation. In this conversation, we're exploring what it means to rebuild identity through movement, how disability reshapes creativity, and the ongoing challenges of working and simply existing in a world that just was not built for us. From navigating the support that we need to live and to work equitably, to redefining what dance can be, this is a conversation about change, resilience, and the power of the body in all its forms. A big thank you to Arts Council England for awarding me the Develop Your Creative Practice grant, which is enabling me to continue these conversations centering on access and dance. Marc, I am so pleased that you're here. Thank you so much for joining us.
it's super cool to be here with you, of course, Suzie.
Well, so it's today it's just an informal chat, and we've known each other for quite a long time, haven't we? How long have we known each other for?
Oh, being stuck in the mud when we did that project with Ballet Cymru and G-Dance back in the day.
I'm thinking 13 years.
13
Yeah.
wonderful years.
Wonderful years, yeah. How blessed. So I wanted to start by saying, by asking you, we both started out in classical dance and what that world meant to you before disability entered the picture.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Australia and had a very traditional dance training, similar to you. I went to a high school which did dance and academic, and then I went on to the Australian Ballet School. And I think even early on, I was quite determined and loved a challenge. I was more of initially when I first started dancing, I was more into jazz and thought I was going to be more of a commercial dancer and then found out about contemporary and, was very, natural mover in contemporary dance and then classical ballet. And I loved the rigor and the technique and also for me, it wasn't natural, but is classical ballet natural anyway. But I love that it didn't feel natural to me as contemporary or jazz did. And I was sort of told that, that maybe I should go down the contemporary dance route. And I was like, well, no, I want to prove you all wrong. I'm going to be a classical ballet dancer. That's what I'm going to do. So I did. So I then became really focused on classical ballet and the technique. And I loved the structure and the discipline and the training. And I was very disciplined and very headstrong. And that's what led me down the classical ballet route. And I guess there was a way I didn't think I was going to get into the Australian Ballet School, but I did. Because back then I was told I didn't have the perfect feet. So, and going into the Australian Ballet School, it was quite arduous and difficult to go through that audition process where one of the first things you do is like the meat marker where you come in front of the panel and you just stand there and turn your feet out into first position. You point your right foot, left foot.
The chorus line, yeah.
Yeah, like chorus line. And then you get a physical examination by physios to check out what's wrong with you. And all of that was a nightmare to go through, but I never thought I'd get through, but I did. So for me, classical ballet really became something I really wanted to prove people wrong, that I could do it. But also I fell in love with it. I loved, how I could, be a better dancer by having this technique and this training.
That's lovely. I don't think I completely fell in love with dance until I was a bit older, actually, and it was the performance that lit me up. So I remember doing a dance festival, and I think I was playing some wildly inappropriate role for a 12-year-old, as you do. So it's like a kind of scorned lady of the night, something like that at 12. Um, and I wasn't a confident child. And it was the sense of feeling like I really held the room, but also that I was so lost in what I was doing that I wasn't thinking about what people were thinking. And that sort of sense of really just holding that space was so exciting. And that's what really interested me. And I think probably that in terms of the rigor and the technique, I didn't really adore that until I then went to dance school when I was a bit older. I think I just had a few problems with focus and concentrating. And it wasn't until a little bit later, when that's all I was doing, that I could really immerse myself in it. But what was that moment that you completely fell in love with dance and you knew, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Well, you made me remember, like, I just love the freedom of dancing and not even knowing what I was doing. I was just with my imagination and wanting to express myself, and my outlet was moving, and for me, I think when I discovered and found that I fell in love with what Judy come known as dance was in, the village I grew up with in Jerilderie, with my mum as a single parent, and we lived in a flat. And I used to just go into the front lawn and, dress up and wear her clothes and my clothes and create a character, a persona, and just joy freely moving on that front lawn. I used to use our windows as like a mirror because we didn't have
Oh, I
mirrors.
love that.
So I'd be able to like see my reflection, and then I invite friends of mine who are girlfriend friends to teach them dance routines as well. So yeah, from a very young age, I think like even 8 or 9, I was creating dances in my front lawn, and that's when I discovered I love dance.
Fantastic. Oh, I've got such a clear image of that.
Yeah.
Little Mark in his front garden. Oh.
Little only boy in the village, he danced.
Setting the bar high.
Yeah.
So as a dancer with dystonia, I find it really fascinating that my condition both drives my movement and it also demands movement. My body needs movement to stay regulated, and then sometimes it gets completely confused about which way it's meant to be moving and how much it's meant to be moving, or if it's meant to be moving. And then figuring that out gave me a sense of control over my condition, and it's completely transformed my body from where I was in my 20s, where I was really critically unwell and spiraling downwards, very, very locked into spasm. Every part of my body was locked into spasm. My face, my diaphragm, my limbs, extremities. Couldn't eat because my larynx was locked into spasm, and I was on a lot of morphine. And that journey to finding a place where I could live, I could actually live, and I could build my health and my strength and my creativity. It was so empowering because that is something I can do. And even now, although I'm, mother of, I've got 2 young children with some additional needs, and until recently I was a carer to my father, and there's a lot going on. Of course I work, but I always find those pockets of time to do intense movement every day, and if I don't, I know that my disability really slips into being something quite different. But how wonderful that I have that control, and that's me doing that. And of course I have lots of support from the medical profession as well, but essentially I have that piece of the jigsaw which is essential. And I just wonder, there's something very particular about navigating that transformation between being a non-disabled dancer person and a disabled dancer, where you have that little bit of extra jigsaw piece that helps you. I wonder how that was for you.
Yeah. What a journey you've been on. See, hey, that's easy. Um, oh my gosh, dance helped me so much, and probably without me really realizing at the time, even all the training I had, you know, when I acquired my disability now, coming up to 28 years ago now, um, I had never been exposed to anybody with a disability in the dance world, being in very traditional classical ballet training. There was no one with disability in my dance classes, of course. Probably only um, experience I had was, you know, of elderly people or people who are using crutches and wheelchairs and so forth, who were coming as audience members to see work.
Mhm.
But then, you know, to be involved in a car crash and then be told you're never going to walk again, you're paralyzed from chest down. Um, you know, obviously, as a dancer, you know, your body is your instrument.
Yeah.
But I just think I just hit a switch of like, which happens as dancers when you're injured, when you get an injury, because often as dancers we're injured or get injury. You know, we have to find other ways of healing and getting better, and also to keep our conditioning of our body as dancers. So I just went into automatic pilot, I think, of like, well, just get me back into rehab, get me into rehabilitation. I'll get better. I'll walk again. Um, and, you know, I was naive. I was 20. You know, I thought that was actually going to happen, that I would walk again. And that didn't happen. But what did happen was I was able, once I was, you know, in a stable condition, then start rehabilitation, I was able to go back into the gym. I was able then to explore, you know, moving in a chair for the first time and getting my strength back. You know, I was able to use swimming as a form of therapy and fitness as well. So I think my training and had really helped, and my love for dance and wanting to keep moving just became automatic. I had to keep moving. And that's what drives me, is dancing, is moving. And, you know, I remember people saying to me, you need to go back and do something else. You need to retrain and go to university and get another degree, do something else. But, you know, that dancer was still within me, and that need to physically move. What was stopping me was other people's perceptions and other people telling me, no, I couldn't do this, which I'm sure you can relate to as well.
Yeah.
And that's when you just got to like put your hands over your ears and just find a way to keep going, to keep dance and movement in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How did you find it in the pool? What was swimming like for you?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, I thought I was going to drown, but
Okay, yeah.
and I was like, oh, I float. Okay, great. And remember, I still got my arms. So I was like, oh, quick, yes, I can use my arms. But you know, I was guided by a swimming coach and a therapist to help. But I love the sense of freedom being in the water. You know, as a wheelchair user, often people say that horrible thing, oh, you can find to your wheelchair. And it's like, no, you know, I'm using my chair as a mobility to get around, but obviously I can do other things and be out of my chair, in my chair. But being in the water was safe, you know, but also that buoyancy to be able to move around in the water and just let my limbs follow is a beautiful feeling and beautiful sensation. And actually, I've always wanted to create a dance in water, but never have. Add that to the list, shall I?
Next thing. Arts Council England.
Yeah. Yeah,
I love that sensation. I love the feeling of it's sort of like being a piece of silk, isn't it? And everything, everything's kind of held in a way that is more difficult outside of the water. That leads me on quite nicely to talk about an accident and life, which is I saw with my lovely friend Claire a couple of weeks ago at Sadler's Wells East. And Mark, it was astounding. It was astounding. And I can't really find the words to describe it, but I was having a little look through your reviews, and my favourite quote that sums it up much better than I can find the words for was from the stage: simple, direct, and devastating in its honesty. And that is, I've actually lost count. I was trying to count the number of 5-star reviews you have. I can't. I've lost count, a lot, including The Guardian. So congratulations on it's obviously it's been incredibly well received, and the raw honesty just hits you in the face. And also knowing you so well and knowing how you choreograph. And Marc, you have, I love working with you as a dancer because you really, really challenge me. And you were the first person to go, well, actually, can you move that leg? And can you move it a bit higher? No, a bit higher. See, can you move that a bit higher? Can you put it up here? And I was like, oh yeah, I can, but I didn't realize that because I hadn't been asked before. But you're so precise and articulate in your movements. You're so challenging, and the tiniest movement needs to you will that little finger needs to be straight, not bent. And it's beautiful. It creates this really concise language that just flows, but also has this incredible artistry woven through it. So and all of that was in there as well, and so subtly. I wonder if, I mean, that was such an honest piece, and I wonder if you're happy to talk just a little bit about that time in your life when, in a heartbeat, everything completely changed, how it affected how you saw yourself as a dancer, and as a person.
Yeah. Yeah, life throws curveballs at us, and we don't expect these things to happen to us. I mean, I was similar to you in age, I was 20 and I thought I had the world ahead of me, and I thought I was invincible,
Yeah.
and yeah. So then to be involved in a car crash, I was in South Africa working in, Pax Ballet at the time. So I fulfilled my goal of being in a classical ballet company. I was doing it, traveling the world. And then boom, in a matter of seconds, life changed. And yeah, I had that moment of a doctor coming into my bedroom, into my hospital bed and telling me that I was never going to walk again. And, you know, it, I was in disbelief, and didn't think this could happen to me. I'm Marc Brew, I'm a dancer.
Mm.
Um, and then, going through, healing and the process of rehabilitation, all of that. And then my identity had changed, but without me even approving it, so to speak.
Yes.
I was seen differently by everybody straight away, because now
Yes.
I wasn't Mark standing up. I was injured,
Yeah.
I was broken, I was in a hospital, I survived a car crash, I had trauma, um, and then, of course, the physical side, if people saw me as now disabled or as a wheelchair user, um, and that I was not who I was before, and that I can't do the things I couldn't do. So all these things got put onto me straight away, with not even being able to make a choice about that, um, or to say how I want to be identified. But in the early days, I remember always wanting to let people know that I'm Mark, I'm a dancer, that's who I am. And that was really, really important to me, even though I know I was sitting down in a chair.
Mm.
I was always saying, yeah, I'm Mark, I'm a dancer. And then, as I grew more confident in my development and confidence in using a chair as a disabled person, then being exposed and meeting other disabled people, because there was a whole world, as I mentioned earlier, that I was never exposed to. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, I'm in that world and I don't know anybody, you
Yeah.
know? So it was really important for me then to reach out and try to then engage with other disabled people. But in Australia at the time, there weren't other people working in the arts or working in dance that were disabled that I was aware of. So I then had to look elsewhere outside of Australia, which is why I ended up going to New York. 2 years after the crash, I was back retraining as a dancer at Steps on Broadway, doing ballet classes again, looking at
Yeah.
how do I translate ballet to my body as a wheelchair user. Um, so it took time, but yeah, my identity did shift, for me wanting to really prove and make sure everyone knew that I was still Marc Brew dancer. Then, this is who I am now, and disability and my disability is now a part of who I am and my identity now.
It really resonates. So you said something about you didn't approve this change of identity. And that's, I think, just so often when we're stuck in a framework of a medical model,
Mm.
we don't have autonomy over our bodies, and it takes us coming out of that and rebuilding ourselves in the way that we choose to, and identifying as the way that we choose to. That really is so crucial, isn't it? It's so crucial. Um, people often assume that disability limits artistry, and we know that that doesn't happen. It expands it. When I've worked with learning disabled artists, I've seen that how a different lived experience and different ways of thinking can create that really kind of rich and diverse textures of work, and new ways of seeing the world. And we know that when I'm teaching ballet class, I often talk about the slide and glide of a wheelchair user, the extension of the crutch that you bring into your line, the hover that you get on crutches. There are all of these qualities that when we look at ballet, we as standing dancers really aspire to achieve.
Yeah.
And to quote, Koch is, creativity. There is great opportunity and creativity in our perceived challenges, our perceived obstacles. So I wonder how that informs the way that you work and the way that you choreograph.
Yeah, I mean, very similar. I mean, I just see possibilities, and
Yeah.
if there are so-called problems, it's about finding solutions. And I think having that lived experience as anybody with a disability, we live that every day. We have to find alternative ways. And I think saying exactly what you had said, but you know, disability and lived experience like this really does add, you know, so much richness to
Mm.
the arts, the dance world, society. Um, and I forgot where I was going with that now. But yeah, just for me and as a choreographer, I I remember I initially was trying to do things the way I used to do them, and
Mm.
but from my chair, trying to really describe, and I then had to use my disability in the way that I moved. And it's almost like I came to this realization that rather than trying to be what I was, I have to use my body and this new and interesting way of movement as a creative tool to push these boundaries of dance, to push
Yeah.
classical ballet to go to new places. And actually, this is quite unique to be able to
Yeah.
do that. Not now with my physical disability, there aren't that many people move like I do, because
Yes.
I have the same spinal cord injury as I do, and paralysis as I do. Um, so I then had to make my own path, and yeah, these themes of that come from disability or come from being a wheelchair user, such as restriction, you know, um, really, it really is part of my creative process. So I use restriction in my work. So see, that restriction creates new and interesting possibilities of movement. So whether that's restricting a limb or restricting space or restriction of time in music, I use that and as a creative tool to make my work. And I'm always looking for ways to, which you mentioned earlier, about pushing and challenging people to go to unfamiliar places and to really challenge themselves into finding unexpected movement vocabulary with what they may have been used to in the past, and also to be really particular at times about what I'm wanting people to achieve. So whether it is that little finger that moves that
Yeah.
and finds that half bend, just because somebody has a disability doesn't mean that you can't have that detail and that specificity. Specificity.
It's a very hard word to say.
Showing the challenge, but yes. Um, yeah, and now that's part of my whole world. My disability is a part of my creative world. It influences my work, even though my work is not always about disability, but it's coming
Yeah.
from me as a disabled person. So it's embedded in the work no matter what.
It's a beautiful way to put it. And I think actually the what you're saying about that really kind of clear articulation and the precision, that's why ballet dancers really love to work with you, because although quite often ballet dancers from traditional backgrounds don't really always enjoy working in different ways because it can hurt their body. They're so used to the rigor of this particular way of working, and you ask them to move differently. But as soon as they get on board with that, and they do very quickly because you're lovely, Marc. But but they enjoy it because you're so precise about, this is where I want you to get to, this is what I want you to achieve. And yeah, I've observed it so many times. It really pushes you. It really challenges you, and it's joy.
You remind me of a moment when I worked with, let's just call it a ballet company. And I came in with this task because I had to learn to not just give information one way. Because when I first used to choreograph as a young lad, a non-disabled person, that I would just create my material on my body and teach it. So people would just shadow and learn, as teachers do,
Yeah.
traditionally when they teach dance. But obviously, then being a wheelchair user and I couldn't get up and demonstrate that, I had to find other ways of getting my information across. So all these images in my head, like a movie, how do I portray that? So then learning that actually that there's not one way of giving information. So I can use demonstration. I can use my arms as my legs. I can use my arms and my arms to demonstrate shapes, but also use imagery as well. I'm trying to use images. I'm trying to use qualities, textures, and also description, like what descriptive words and action words can I also use to help feed into that. So I've had to really learn to express what I'm wanting in multiple ways. And I remember one day going into this ballet company and giving a task around teaching them a material. And often the ballet company, which I'm sure you're used to knowing too, but they often are taught steps very traditionally, like you learn this movement from me. So I went in and then, okay, I'm going to teach you a phrase, but this phrase is only going to be an arm phrase. So they'll vary, so like Marc Brew arms, let's say. So I gave them this structure and I said, okay, this image of like, I'm giving you an outline, a stencil of like a coloring in book. So we have this image, this shape, this movement we've created. And so I gave them this structure. And then I asked them to now with the rest of their bodies, because they just learned it standing up, not moving.
Yeah.
I now want you to shade that in with all your colors of your own movement. How do you fill in this outline with your body? And a lot of them just went blank and just went, what? What? You want us to do what? And I'm like, what's wrong? What's up? And they're like, well, we usually get given the steps and the leg work to do and the movement, and we can add the arms, but you've given us the opposite. You've given us arms and no legs. So what do we do? I'm like, we'll go and discover that. But, for some of them it was really, really hard because that's not how they worked before. But for me, actually, I'm giving them this restriction of just doing the arms first, but then creating other possibilities to use the rest of their body. But some of them found it quite challenging to do that. But for me, it was like, this is an extremely exciting and creative opportunity to explore new possibilities of ways of moving for yourself.
It's a journey, isn't it? Because actually ballet is, or can be, so rigid, and there's so many definite rules. And, even as an adult, you can get really told off for coming outside of those rules. So it's almost like, you have to give permission, and you're so good at that because you're so warm and so loving in the space and so accepting. So yeah, because it's actually really terrifying for people to step outside of what's okay.
Definitely.
Thank you for sharing that. That was very, very interesting. It really resonated. I can see it all over the place. I just wanted to ask you about the way that you identify, whether it's as a dancer or as a disabled dancer. And I've had a bit of a journey with this, and I know that we've talked about this before. So I'm asked that question a lot. And my answer a few years ago was always, I'm a dancer. That's what my job is. I'm a dancer. I didn't feel that I needed to specify that I'm a disabled dancer. And then on my journey, I've done a lot of thinking about what it is that I want to embody. I'd say represent, but I don't represent anything. I do, but to embody, to share, to be useful. In what ways I want to be useful. And I'm a mentor and a trainer and a dancer. And I feel a sense of responsibility being that little bit older, just a tiny bit older, Marc, just like to make that clear, just a little bit older than some of the 25-year-old dancers that I work with. And I feel a sense of responsibility to have that kind of visibility as to what I want to bring And I now feel that using the term disabled dancer is a political statement. Our being in the space is a political statement. It disrupts the norm. It disrupts the expected. And so I will now use the term disabled dancer to frame the advocacy and lobbying and activism role that I bring to the work that that I embody as a dancer. And that's been my journey. But I've done a lot of thinking about it, and I'm just really interested to kind of hear where you sit on that.
Yeah, I mean, I really relate to everything you were just saying, and it has been a journey. I mean, talking about, earlier in our conversation around, you know, identities were put onto me without me, giving permission for that. So for me, it personally has been a journey. And I initially was like, oh, I'm Marc, and yes, I'm a dancer, and they were the things that I was holding on to because that was my norm. That's what I was used to. That's
Yeah,
how I had trained. Um, but as I have evolved and matured, let's say, and gained more
again, just
experience,
fractionally, so you work. Yeah.
and um, I have realized that your identity can shift and change through life. There's no reason why it needs to stay one way. It's only because society expects us to be this one thing, and that's what you are. That's how you're born into this world, and that's how you live this world. But no, it can evolve. We can learn new skills. We can become qualified at something else. We may change careers. We may become a parent. So your identities evolve, and mine has evolved and changed. Um, and I have definitely felt a responsibility, and also now very proud that that disability is a huge part of my identity. Just as being a gay man, as identifying also as being queer, also as being Australian and also British.
Yeah.
These things are all a part of my makeup. That my worldly lived experience that I'm proud of, and so I do share in all of my copywritten information and so forth, interviews, and it is important for me, to advocate for that it is that I am identified as a disabled artist, or a dancer. Even like choreographer, directors, like, oh, which one do I use?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
clothes am I
Which
wearing
one?
today?
Yeah.
And now, as like I'm now a parent and my son is turning 3 in December. So, and I'm also really proud of that. And it's like, yeah, I'm a parent. I identify as a parent now, and that's a part of who I am.
Well, on being a parent, we're both parents of young children, and that adds for me that adds multiple layers of complication to my work. But it also, especially now, Artie, my oldest, who's 8, coming up 9, is older, and he's getting a sense of who I am and how I'm different from other mummies at the school gates. It's a huge motivation for me to be a strong, independent, working woman. I want to show my boys that I'm strong and powerful and capable. That I'm not,
You are, by the way,
which I am. Like, I think it's, I am so often seen by society as weak or fragile and vulnerable, and we are all fragile and vulnerable in our own ways, of course, and we wouldn't be human. But I don't feel fragile or vulnerable at all. I feel my age, actually, in a healthy way. I feel capable, and I certainly feel really capable of taking care of my children, and of working and taking care of my family and friends. And when I'm working, that sense of otherness goes because I'm in the driving seat, as it were. I'm delivering training. I'm helping people. I'm on people's journeys to help them to shape the way that they might open a different window to see the world. So my confidence comes alive again. And I wondered how parenting as a disabled person influence your creative life. And I'm thinking about some of your new work, actually, and whether or not your work, which is for younger children, has really sort of come into your mind because of Jeddy.
Yeah, no, I am making work for younger audiences now, and I mean, I have had an interest of wanting to do that, and I have had a good relationship with Imaginate, who run the Edinburgh International Children's Festival. So I've been wanted to go to children's festivals to explore that, but definitely becoming a parent put it at the forefront, you know,
Yeah.
because I also want to make work that my that my son, that that my family are proud of. Not saying they're not proud of the work I'm making now, but
They can
also
access
be
it.
aware of, yeah, also for
Yeah.
younger audiences,
Yeah.
and like, yeah, I can make a difference. And I feel like I've got things that are important that they could relate to, So the first work I made for younger audiences, was called The Race, and I was using Aesop fables, sort of mixing a few of the stories together to tell the story through dance and puppet and using sign language and audio description in the work. And that was a co-commission between, the Arc, which is an amazing children's venue space in Dublin, as well as Dublin Dance Festival and Disability Ireland as well. So that was a really great virtual collaboration. But and now I'm about to make a new work for young audiences called Boys Don't Dance, which is looking on, yeah, I guess in a way semi-biographical, looking at my experience growing up in a small wee village. Um, as the only boy who danced, and
Yeah.
how I was teased, and how the struggle of trying to fulfill my passion of wanting to dance but being told I couldn't, which often we are told. So how do you find the drive to fulfill your goals when people are telling you you can't? How do you support others that may do things differently to
Yeah.
do the best that they can do? So something really important for me that this work will create, that opportunity for people to engage with that type of work. And also, it also touches on being told as a disabled person that I couldn't dance because I was disabled. So bringing sort of those experiences together to make this work of Boys Don't Dance. So that's going to actually start R&D for that in November, and then start making that in January, and that will premiere next year in June. So watch out for Boys Don't Dance. Um, but yeah, parenting, I mean, even before, when we're talking about time and how movement and dance is, still part of your life and really helps with your disability.
Mm.
And as you know, like as a parent, my number one now is my son, and he always gets the
Yeah.
priority. So I feel like when I'm working and when I'm touring and when I'm in the studio, like, yes, I'm doing it, but I do find it hard to find time, because you go into dad or parent mode. Like now I'm the parent, so it is about trying to find that balance, which is hard, um,
Mhm.
to be able to move between those worlds. But it affects every part of, I'm just probably a more full person because I now have this experience of being a parent. There's nothing like it.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Mark, what inspires you right now, personally or artistically?
You, Susie,
Oh,
you
of
renting
course.
around me. What inspires me? I, I'm just here looking beyond my computer. I see nature, I see the beauty of the world. I see, amongst all of the craziness that's going on in this world, that there are still these moments where the sun shines brightly, and these interactions between people, and that we still keep that kindness in our lives.
Mm.
And for me, being able to make work that reaches and connects with people, and that I feel inspires me to keep going, and making an accent in life. I never thought I'd make a piece about that moment in my life, and then there beyond, about
Yeah.
reclaiming your life and the resilience of the human spirit, and how what we do to navigate and find a way to make the most of our lives. And that inspires me to keep going.
Wonderful. And what if a young disabled dancer or a newly disabled person came to you? What would be your kind of one nugget of advice that you might give, your guidance?
Oh, I was trying to work out a way to frame it. My gut initial reaction was, don't take no for an answer, find your own path, and keep dancing, follow follow your passion. And I think that's the thing is like, just to share a little bit, like I acquired my disability. So I wasn't born with my disability. So I had 20 years of experience of living without a disability.
Yeah.
So I never had experience up until then being told I couldn't. I mean, obviously I was told I couldn't do things that were going to be illegal, of course, but if I wanted to like learn a sport, I could go do that.
Yeah.
Either if I wanted to learn an instrument, I could go do that. But then knowing, if you are disabled, people are telling you, no, you can't do these things.
Left,
You
right, and
know,
centre. Yeah.
so how do you know that you can achieve these things, or even unless someone gives you the opportunity, and that's why it's really important that I feel, I'm sure you do now in our roles now, is about advocating and creating opportunities for that younger generation disabled person so they can fulfill their goals, so they know that they can be an actor if they want to be an actor, or perform, on stage, or dance, whatever it may be, that they have the courage and knowing that they would be supported to be able to achieve that.
Absolutely. Oh, Marc, thank you so much, not just for sharing your story, but also for the way that you keep expanding dance and disability. I would really encourage all of our listeners to go and research you, to go and have a look at the Marc Brew company and see all of the incredible work that you are doing and the work that you have done as well. So for anybody that's listening that is navigating change in their body, their identity, or their art, I hope this conversation reminds you that movement never disappears, it just transforms. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Marc.
Yay. It's always a pleasure.